Before that body was found in that car park, the most telling portrayals of Richard III's physical appearance came in the many paintings and literary texts about him. The most famous of those is Shakespeare's Richard III, where, in Act 1, Scene 1, Richard describes himself in less than glowing terms.
Deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up. And that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark as I hope by them.
Shakespeare had Richard describe himself as deformed and so ugly that dogs used to bark at him as they walked past. It's a theme that's replicated in other historical texts. 30 years after Richard died, Thomas More described him as little of stature, croak-backed, and his left shoulder much higher than his right. Of course, now we have a much better understanding of what Richard may really have looked like.
Obviously, we needed to keep the samples in a secure location in a clean lab, and this is where we were keeping them, in the clean lab in the Space Research Centre. In that freezer just there.
It looks so regal. The team at Leicester University, led by Dr. Turi King, had a unique opportunity to find out if the pictures painted by those words were accurate.
Shakespeare talks about him having a limp and a withered arm, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever. Shakespeare describes him as a hunchback. Now, he didn't have kyphosis, which is sort of hunchback, but a sideways curve, scoliosis, so there's a little bit of something there.
The skeletal remains were not enough on their own to be sure that this was Richard III. For that, they needed a living relative and some DNA. Michael Ibsen had already been identified as a descendant of Richard III's eldest sister. They took samples of his DNA and compared it to the samples taken from the body in the car park. Even early on, it was clear that there was a match.
My friend Pat and I, we were working together and gave each other a little hug, and then I got up and did a little dance around the lab because it was just, it's one of those moments where you think, okay, calm, a lot more work to do, but my goodness, this is looking good already. Yeah, no, it was amazing.
Further testing meant that they were 99.999% certain that they'd found the last Plantagenet king. Other DNA work has since revealed a high probability of blue eyes and childhood blonde hair, but not everyone was happy about the amount of work carried out on Richard's remains.
All of us really wanted Richard treated as a human being and a former head of state. For that reason, I think we felt that scientific research that was just curious rather than for identification was perhaps not justifiable.
The university say that all research involving human remains is subject to strict ethical codes and procedures and will provide a complete archive of information that historians, scientists and the public will be able to access and use. Work is still ongoing from the data collected from Richard's remains, but everything has now been returned and will remain in Leicester Cathedral. Michael Sibbett, ITV News, Leicester.